Great. So when I was tasked to figure out this keynote. Well, the subject was really broad, so I'm going to try to keep it simple and short in 20 minutes, just so that you get a good sense of what circularity looks like specifically for fashion. Thank you again for inviting me, and please, if you do have questions, don't forget them, and we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So before we actually talk about what circular fashion is, I think it's important to remember the current model that we usually operate in our industry, which is linear fashion. In linear fashion is very much we take resources that are finite from nature. We are going to make products with these resources. We're going to use these products, and when these products are no longer serve their purpose, we dispose of them. We waste them, essentially. And these usually end up in our landfills that in Hong Kong is quite problematic because the landfills are very full. And it's a bit of a waste of resources. When we talk about circular fashion, what we do is we take that line and we start making a loop. Instead of just taking finite resources, we actually think of regenerating these resources. So when we take something from nature, we don't deplete nature, we try to replenish it. And once we have these resources at hand, we make a product. We'll use the product, the usual, but when this product doesn't serve the purpose, the original purpose anymore, instead of wasting it, we put it back and we use these resources to make something again. And ideally, in fashion, we make a product, a fashion product, maybe a garment, and then we're going to use it, and hopefully we can remake a garment out of it. That's the best way, the highest value that we can give to these resources. Instead of saying, okay, I made a garment, and then I'm just going to make a carpet or insulation out of it. This is still circularity, but it's not the best value we can get from these resources. So this is just kind of what we're trying to do. Circular fashion, according to Ellen MacArthur Foundation, if you're not very familiar, by the way, with this institution, I highly recommend that you visit their page. They're kind of in a bit of an institution and a big name in circularity, not just in fashion. So Ellen MacArthur Foundation, they've kind of defined 3 big principles for circular fashion. The first principle that we're going to go through is around eliminating waste and pollution. They essentially say that it's just bad design if you have waste and pollution, and you could just design better. The second principle we'll go through is circulating products and materials. And here I haven't added that little point on the slide, but it's to its highest value. So as I just said before, if you're going to make a t-shirt, try to use that t-shirt as much as you can. When you can't use that t-shirt anymore, try to make a new t-shirt out of it. And then the third principle that we'll touch on is around regeneration and basically stop depleting nature. So let's look at the first principle. So eliminating waste and pollution. For each principle, I added a few questions that I think are good guiding questions, whether you're in the industry and you're working on projects where you're making products, or if you're about to enter the workforce and you're trying to think about these. What does that mean, eliminating waste and pollution? Well, I think because we're all operating in a linear model at the moment, we have waste on hand. So we need to understand what is this waste? Literally, like what type of waste is it? What composition is it? What is it? Industrial waste? Is it post-consumer waste? Is it just textile? Is it other type of waste? So what is it that you're generating? And when are you generating it? When, as in, at which stage? I mean, we've seen there's between taking resources and to using a product, there's a lot of things that are happening in between, and you're most likely generating a little bit of waste everywhere. So what are you generating? When are you generating it? And then why? Why are you generating it? And really that should be the key, is like, well, do we have to generate that waste, or can we just make just improve our operations, improve the design. So these are things to keep in mind. To go into something that's a little bit more concrete, and I have a background in engineering and textiles, so I work a lot in operations, so I kind of went through, what does that mean when you actually work in a company? So I think the first thing that's important to keep in mind, and you'll see how, circularity always touches on the bigger, broader topic of just climate change and, carbon footprint and water footprint and all of these things. So when we talk about waste, let's look at water and carbon emissions or energy. Here, you're most likely wasting water in your operations. You're most likely wasting energy or just using a lot of energy that maybe you could minimize. So a good thing to think of is basically how can you implement closed-loop systems? And here I'm thinking, for example, in a plant that does dyeing and finishing, you're most likely using a lot of water. Well, some plants have closed-loop systems, as in they just keep using the same amount of water, and they might just need to top up a little bit of the water that's evaporating somewhere along their operations. That's a closed-loop system. That means you're essentially not wasting anymore. You're just using and reusing what you have on hand. For energy, it could be turning to renewable energy. Basically, make sure you're minimizing as much as you can. You're not pumping energy like crazy, but also you're trying to find ways of not using too carbonated energy, like not coal, or you're going to turn to wind turbines, or depending on where you are, in the world. And once you've kind of looked at this, you can also look at alternative manufacturing methods, because again, for example, taking finishing, dyeing, which is very water intensive and very energy intensive, there are now technologies that are better, where you don't need to put the thermostat as high to dye your cotton or your polyester. You might not need to use any water to do some dyeing. You might just be able to do it in CO2 critical, supercritical. So there are manufacturing techniques where you could literally just design out the generation of waste and pollution. So that's for water and carbon. There's also chemicals that we're wasting or discharging. So the first important thing, I think, might sound a little bit basic, but I think it's important to remind everyone that you need to make sure your manufacturing practices are actually following all chemical regulations that are in place. And I'm thinking here REACH, for example, REACH, which is a regulation around what kind of chemicals you're allowed to use that are safe to use. There's a bunch of different things that exist in the chemical world. I'm definitely come from that background, but I'm definitely not an expert. But there's few regulations that you need to follow. That's the minimum that you need to do. And then, as I was talking about, better manufacturing practices to save water, to save energy, well, there's better ones to save chemicals, just exactly the same. So these are good alternatives to kind of inscribe yourself in the circular principle of eliminating waste and pollution. The last thing, and that's probably maybe the most obvious thing, let's say, is textile waste. Textile waste exists everywhere, from the moment we grow cotton or we extract oil to make polyester or nylon and synthetics in general. And we're just going to shed, literally, some textile waste all along the manufacturing line. So here, you need to really identify all these different points of the value chain and really get to the root cause. For example, here, I've put on the slide a pattern. This is a zero waste pattern. A zero waste pattern is a bit challenging in the real world of operations and scaled manufacturing. But it's something that everyone could tend to have been like, okay, well, if we design patterns for a t-shirt better, where we don't create all these little spaces everywhere and therefore generate a lot of industrial waste, and if we really try to increase our material efficiency, well, then we don't create waste anymore. So maybe we can just adjust the design. So there are things like this that you can think of. Maybe it's just calibrating your cutting table and machine better. maybe it's spending a little bit more time on Gerber or Electra to work on your patterns so that you hit, you know, a 90% or like an 87% efficiency rather than 82. And when you scale that, it's huge. So textile waste is a big part. That was for eliminating waste and pollution. I know it's quite fast, but I need to move on. So circulating materials and products, that's the second principle. What does that mean? Well, 3 questions again to kind of have in mind. Why our products are reaching end of life? Literally, why? Is it because it just falls apart? Is it because the consumer's just bored of it? Is it because it was itchy, so no one wants to wear it more than once? Is it because the care instructions were really bad and everyone shrunk their jumper in the wash? Why is your product reaching end of life? Once you've cracked that one, well, what can you do about it so that your product stays longer with the same wearer or maybe has multiple lives? You need to think about this so that you can actually circulate and enable the circulation of your products. And then I think the last question is quite interesting because this is probably where everyone thinks, well, circularity is just going to cost us loads and we're just not going to make any money out of it. And that's where I'd say it's wrong, because you can figure out what value you can get from that. Well, what if you manage to get, your so-called waste, or your products are, waste because no one wears them anymore? What if you manage to get them and they become your new raw materials? Suddenly you don't need to buy more raw materials. So there's probably something that you can monetize. If you're involved, maybe as a brand, on the multiple lives that the wearer is giving, so instead of just putting a product out there and be like, well, let it go, but you're actually kind of tracking and making sure that you're there every once someone sells it, buys it, and you can monetize that again and get a bit of money out of it. So I think this is kind of what you need to keep in mind when you're thinking circulating products and materials, is what kind of value can you get out of it for yourself, so you can probably pay for all these other initiatives that are costing you money. Here are 2 different things that I could kind of maybe gather for you to understand and have concrete examples. First, I want to talk about post-consumer products. So post-consumer products are basically all the products that everyone's wearing in that room. That's considered post-consumer. Here are 3 aspects, 3 big lines, let's say. First, you need to make sure your product has a good physical longevity. It's durable. People know how to take care of it so that the seams don't break, so that it doesn't start pilling after one wash. You just want to make sure your product is actually good quality. And this is by design and sourcing the right materials. So here, there's a lot of work to be done with designers and merchandising teams and sourcing teams together to make sure that you build the best product you can. And then we talked about, making sure that your product has several lives. So here you can explore new business models. And here I'm talking maybe more as a brand. I come from Lacoste. I've worked in a lot of different brands. Here you want to think, okay, well, I'm going to need, if my consumers are going to wear the product longer because we're making good products, how do we make them come back? Well, maybe we offer them repair services. Maybe we offer them secondhand platforms where they can trade in the products. Maybe we offer them upcycling services because they gained a little bit of weight, or they're tired of their long shirt and they want a crop top out of it, and we're just going to help them redesign that product. There's loads of new ways you can interact with your consumers, and they're just going to generate money for you. And the last thing, I think, is more working with your marketing team. Not marketing for marketing. Hopefully that comes into your brand values, but it's adapting that messaging to basically say, hey, our products are great. We want you to wear them for long. We don't want you to leave them in landfill. Again, a brand like Lacoste is known, to actually pass down polos, or where your grandpa's going to wear the same polo that you're wearing. So for brands like this, it may be a bit easier to adapt the message and say, these products are great, just keep them for generations. But even if brands don't have that legacy, I don't think it's too hard to, you know, kind of insufflate the same principle. The other type of waste or products that we're trying to circulate is, well, anything that's considered waste. And here I highlighted in yellow. Your waste is not waste, it's raw material, it's resources, are things that you can use. And here that means whenever you're wasting something along your value chain, you need to take responsibility for it and you need to reclaim it. You need to find a second life solution, hopefully that has a high value and that's not just downcycling. And if you want to be able to use your waste, it's in your interest to make sure that you're going to produce good quality waste with good materials. So that means you need to start thinking of recyclability. When you start mixing fibers like a crazy amount and, you know, with crazy colors and, you know, dyes are maybe not very respectful on the environment and all of this, and you realize, now what do I do with this? I can't reuse it. I'm not interested. So I've kind of wasted my money. But if you start using compositions that, you know, you can reuse again, with maybe colors that you can reuse in a country where there's some sort of recycling solutions, jackpot. Great, I don't need to buy virgin materials anymore. I've got my own set of materials. This is great. So this is the kind of attitude that you need to start thinking of. I know we're running a bit out of time, so I'm going to power through the last principle, stop depleting nature and regenerating it. Here, I guess the industry is a bit less mature. We're all less mature on that topic, but I think the two guiding principles to have in mind is, first, what materials are you extracting? Why are you extracting it? Is it cotton? Is it oil? Is it linen? Is it, you know, what is it that you're taking from nature? And is that benefiting, as you're extracting, can you benefit the communities that are around? Can you make it benefiting for the environment? I think this is just a guiding principle that you need to start being aware of. So when you source materials, you need to be critical about the materials claim. If your material supplier is telling you that it's all well and pretty and fantastic for the communities, maybe to just dig a bit deeper and just figure it out. Is it really sound? Get technical, you know, go and see what it looks like and just use your critical thinking and just try to prioritize these materials that are just better for community. So, circularity in fashion, this is what it looks like. Okay, we regenerate, we make, we use, we make, we use, we make, we use. The reality, when you start working on operations, circularity is loads of little circles within circles within circles. So when you talk about regeneration, there's here its own circles of when you grow materials and when you extract. When you're making we talked about closed loop systems for water, for maybe chemicals, for energy. When we start using, we want to make sure we go through repair services. We want to make sure we reuse, maybe through secondhand platforms. Then we can bridge using and making with remanufacturing and upcycling. And then, just then, once you have done all of that, you can look at recycling. Recycling is not the silver bullet for everything, really not. And actually, if you just look at this, you're going to waste money, probably. So you want to look at all these little inner circles of circularity. That was my speech. If you want to know more, get in touch. We've got about 5 minutes of questions and answers. Please hit me with your questions. No question is stupid. And yes, that's it.